That's
So just are you defending Trump as somehow being a person who is? I mean,
so
I don't understand. I don't understand your argument at this point, though, man. What are we talking about? What are we
okay.
talking
So there's
about? I want to understand what the content of your argument is.
Joe Biden is responsible for the mass incarceration, not Donald Trump. Who is more responsible for black and brown people being locked up and America being the largest penal colony in the world? Is it Donald Trump or would it be Joe Biden? By the way, this conversation is a loser for your campaign.
I want to hear your argument. I want to hear your argument as to how Biden is more fascist than Trump.
Trump
just lay it out right quick.
Well, I'll tell you right now, the reason why the deep state Russiagated Trump was because he wouldn't bomb enough to calm them down. So he wouldn't do enough bombing. The reason they impeached him because he wouldn't ship arms to Nazis in Ukraine.
My God. How is it possible? Like, how is it possible that Jimmy can consistently pick the dumbest position on every issue?
Yeah, it's psychological reaction.
It's like an art. It's like an art, you know. The reason the Russiagate happened was because Trump wouldn't bomb enough countries. What?
Right.
What? Really? Okay. It's funny because I feel like essentially what's going on here is, so he has to take the opposite position that the mainstream media takes. The mainstream media obviously pushed a lot of the Russia collusion stuff, which all turned out to be untrue, obviously. But it was primarily at the time that it was going on, there was like the left-right divide. So the left's position was Trump was, colluding with Russia, and the right's position was this is just a witch hunt to try to destroy Trump's credibility. And
Right.
Jimmy's like, well, I can't agree with the mainstream media, so I can't agree with Trump-Russia stuff, but I'm not on the right, so I can't agree necessarily with the right wing. So I have to create like a left-wing framework or a leftist framework to explain Trump-Russia investigation. I know it's because he won't bomb enough countries.
Right. Trump is
What?
anti-war.
Like the Trump-Russia stuff even started before Trump was even president. How would they had a crystal ball? The CIA has a crystal ball, and they said, "Oh, we could look into the future. We know Trump is going to bomb enough countries, so we got to get him before he's even president."
Well, when he became president, they asked him on day one, "Hey, here's the list of countries we want to bomb. Sign this document." And Trump was like, "Nah, I'm not going to sign that." I can't believe Jimmy Dore is. I mean, it seems like he's a Trump supporter here. So Jimmy
says
Dore's
he's not. He says he hates Trump later in
Jimmy
this
Dore's in favor of Trump because he's anti-war.
He says he hates Trump later in this conversation. So I'm not even sure. He just hates Biden more, I feel like.
Right.
But it's funny. This is one of those funny situations too, where like both sides look at the same thing as the opposite of each other, and they both can't be true. So the left looked at Trump as like, he's a reckless, warmonger. He was questioning the generals about nuking countries, and he dropped the mother of all bombs, in Afghanistan. And he wanted to start a war just to keep himself in office. And then Jimmy Dore's like, no, it's the opposite. He was so not a warmonger, the deep state wanted to get rid of him because the deep state has so much control. The deep state's so funded that the evil deep state is just so funded by the continual military industrial war complex that just because Trump wouldn't bomb more countries, they had to get rid of him.
Yeah, I don't look.
Why? Well, here's my question. Sorry to interrupt you.
Okay,
here's my
go
question.
ahead.
Okay, if the Trump Russiagate thing was all part of the deep state operation to get rid of Trump because he wasn't bombing enough countries, then why didn't they have Mueller just come out and say that there was a Trump-Russia connection and then impeach him?
I'm not sure.
Why would they have Mueller come out and say there wasn't a Trump-Russia connection? I mean,
well, I'm assuming he came out and said that because the evidence wasn't in favor of there being one. The evidence didn't support that claim.
That is true, right? That is true. But we're operating under the idea that there was some sort of investigation that had some level of good faith, and Jimmy Dore's operating under the idea that this is a conspiracy.
Right.
And so if it was a conspiracy, why didn't they say that he was true, number one, and then number two, why didn't they just impeach him? If we live in this evil duopoly where the Democrats and Republicans are all fascists working together to stop Donald Trump, why didn't they impeach him? and then have Mike Pence, who is like, as we know from the debate, okay, we
He's
know
ready
very,
to bomb. He's
Yeah.
like, sign me up. How
Right.
many countries can we bomb this week?
we know from the Republican debate, Mike Pence, classic neocon, wants to go around the world being Team America, world police. Okay, why would they not have got rid of Trump
Look,
if this conspiracy is true?
This is just crazy, Sitch. What you're
Yeah.
laying out is obviously insane. This is not possible.
Yeah.
It's not possible unless we live in a world that just defies everything we know to be true. So,
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
I understand the thought experiment that you're trying to do here. You're trying to say, look, Jimmy Dore's position is crazy. I think Jimmy Dore's position is on its face crazy.
Well, obviously.
A lot of people buy this position, though, obviously. They think
I've never heard this argument. I've heard that the Democrats and the deep state want to get rid of Trump because,
Oh,
they
I've
don't-
heard this.
He won't play ball with them, or they don't like him because he's Republican. I haven't heard that he hasn't bombed enough countries argument. So
Oh, I've heard this argument.
Okay.
Yeah. Look, Trump is playing the Ukraine thing. I've been listening very closely to Trump on Ukraine.
Mhm.
And right now, Trump's Ukraine position is it's not a problem because Trump is like the excellent negotiator and he's going to end the war tomorrow. And Biden
Yes.
could do this as well if he just wasn't such a
Loser.
piece of crap. Yeah, such a loser. Such a cucked loser, right?
Right.
Well, obviously, I'm somewhat skeptical of that's a possibility for Trump to do. I mean, if he could, I think, yeah, do it. That'd be awesome, right? It's kind of this Pollyanna view of the world that this could happen. If that doesn't happen, which I think is probably likely, that Trump can't end the war just by snapping his fingers or making a few phone calls, I don't know that Trump is not going to adopt Biden's Ukraine position and still be sending weapons and doing all the things Biden is doing. I would not be surprised if Trump did that.
I agree completely. And I'm glad you brought that up because it's a great point. It's so weird that so many of the Trump supporters and people on the right who are very against helping Ukraine, I guess it's not where it's very obvious, but why is this happening? There's like this complete blind spot because Trump, as you're laid out very well, Trump has been very careful to not say that he's going to just stop sending military support to Ukraine.
Yes.
He's been very careful to specifically not say that.
And he didn't go in the Republican debate where they asked specifically this question. How
Right.
convenient.
And he's been asked this question. He's been asked this question several times, and he always gives the same answer. Well, when I'm president, I'm gonna end the war so quick. You don't understand. I'm gonna end the war so quick. I'm gonna be like Putin. We're gonna hash out a deal here, right? He's
it's a non-issue.
Right, it's a non-issue. Like he's so very clear to not say, like, well, what if you can't hash out a deal? Well, then I'm going to cut off support to Ukraine. He's not said that. And to my knowledge, he's never said that. And it's fascinating that there's this complete blind spot for a lot of the Trump supporters who are in favor of stopping sending aid to Ukraine, that they haven't picked up that Trump hasn't really adopted that position.
Right.
And I think you're 100% correct. I think if the wars continue to go on and Trump becomes president, I think he is going to keep sending support to Ukraine.
Well, he has an excuse. Look, to the Trump supporters who are saying he will cut off aid, saying that he's going to cut off aid totally undercuts his negotiating position. So he can't say that. So the Trump supporters will say, look, he can't say that, but he will do that. The bet that I am willing to make with Trump supporters is that he ain't going to do that.
Yeah. That'd be my guess as well.
He's not going to do that.
No.
He's just not going to do it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or rather advocate for it when he's president. I don't even know if the president has the authority to just cut off aid like that. But
do you think Trump wants to see the kind of horror show that's going to happen if Ukraine is completely undefended by American weapons?
No, I don't think so.
It's going to be on the news every night.
Yeah, and he doesn't want that on his his presidency.
Yeah.
And also, and we have to remember again, Trump's big thing, and a part of why I think he is an effective businessman, is that if you support him, he'll come out and be your biggest friend. And then if you attack him, he's going to be your biggest enemy. He's very kind of carrot and stick with us. And everyone forgets, and this is why everything is so funny. When you see the Matrix very clearly, everything is so funny. Zelensky, who now the right all hates, they all hate his guts for some. It's so funny. They all hate his guts just because of the association of his country being involved with the first impeachment, even though Zelensky was literally doing everything Donald Trump asked him to do.
Right. Yep.
He was literally doing everything Donald Trump asked him to do. And that's why Donald Trump's always been kind of like, oh, yeah, Zelensky's a good guy. Like, he's not on the anti-Zelensky train that all the right's on.
He is
it's
not.
So funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because he was doing it because Zelensky's just like a politician from Ukraine. He's like, whatever. I don't give a crap. Whatever's going on in America. If you want me to go dig up dirt on Joe Biden, I'll go do it for you. I don't care.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's funny because the inverse of that is true too. The left, now that like, since the left has been so pro the Ukraine war and anti-Russia, the left is all like, oh my God, Zelensky's a hero. You know, they're lionizing him. They want to build a statue of him, even though Zelensky was literally willing and like a day away from doing Trump's dirty work, and announcing publicly on CNN that he was going to open up investigations into Burisma, you know, so Trump could use that to beat Joe Biden over the head with. Even though Zelensky was about to do that and then only didn't because at the last minute the heat got so much on Donald Trump that he had to release the foreign aid before that, and they essentially canceled the thing, because then that would be used as evidence against Donald Trump in the impeachment trial if Zelensky actually did go on TV and said that stuff. The people on the left forget all that.
Yeah.
They don't care.
People have a short memory, man.
They don't care. It's just whatever the narrative is at the day. They just, you know, it's like the people on the left now all of a sudden supporting Mitt Romney, even though they called him the devil, you know, when he was running against Obama. It's very funny to me when you see the Matrix and you see how quickly, you know, people's opinions shift on individuals depending on whatever the circumstances are, you know, at that time.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Same thing with Chris Christie. Now the left is like, Chris Christie, oh, he's such a hero.
Okay.
And Jimmy Dore pushing this, like, they impeached Trump because he wouldn't give weapons to Ukraine. Like, I'm going to throw a Jimmy Dore at Jimmy Dore here. You know, you're like, Jimmy, you know, you're lying, right? Like, you know, you have to know that is a literal lie. You have to 100% know that you are just lying out your ass, because you should know that Trump had literally zero problem giving that money to Ukraine, and nothing to do with the ideology of, I don't think we should be giving material support to Ukraine. It was, I'll give you this money when you say you're going to open an investigation into Burisma. It was very clearly a quid pro quo. So don't tell me that there was some ideological thing happening here for why Trump, you know, didn't want to give money to Ukraine.
Well, he's saying that the reason why the deep state went after Trump was because he wouldn't bomb countries.
No, but he said that they impeached him because he wouldn't sell weapons to Ukraine. But that's not true. He was impeached because he was illegally using the power of the presidency to, you know, prevent foreign aid that was lawfully his directive to give to Ukraine, to give to them on the stipulation that he wanted to use it as to dig up dirt on Joe Biden, essentially.
Look, I sat on this live stream and I listened to you debate impeachment for 8 hours.
Yeah, I know.
Straight.
I know.
So I know everything there is possibly to know about impeachment.
Right. But Jimmy has to know that. I'm going to throw a Jimmy Dore at him and say he has to know that, and he's lying.
Okay.
And it's that. So that's
so just are you defending Trump as somehow being a person who is? I mean, I don't understand. I don't understand your argument at this point. So, man, what are we talking about?
Okay, so there's.
I want to understand what the content of your argument is, because one can, in fact, bring critique to bear on the system as a whole with the two corporate wings. But somehow, what do you say to trans and gays and lesbian brothers and sisters in terms of their rights?
So that's again. Joe Biden is responsible for the mass incarceration, not Donald Trump. Who is more responsible for black and brown people being locked up and America being the largest penal colony in the world? Is it Donald Trump or would it be Joe Biden? By the way, this conversation is a loser for your campaign.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty funny, huh?
His interaction is so like wild. So it's funny.
He's like, we probably shouldn't talk about this.
Right. So Cornel West asked him, he asked him a question, which I'd be interested, but then he ruins the question and he gives Jimmy an out, which Jimmy doesn't take. Because he asked the question like, well, wait a minute, are you defending Trump what's happening in this conversation? But you can also call, them both evil. But what do you say? But then I'm like, okay, that's kind of interesting. I'm curious, is Jimmy defending Trump? Is Jimmy supporting Trump here? What exactly is Jimmy's position here? But then he throws in what do you tell like the LGBT community, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like as if there's some kind of trans genocide happening and that has something to do with Trump or some ridiculous argument there. And then Jimmy's like idiotic response, instead of to just pivot against kind of like the woke LGBT issue, is to say, well, listen, Joe Biden is locking up black and brown people across the country. I don't know if you know this, Cornel West, but Joe Biden is personally going from state to state, locking up black and brown people all across the country.
Yeah.
And you're like, what? And then he's like, and by the way, we shouldn't even be talking about this because talking about this makes you look bad, which to me reeks of Jimmy Dore doesn't have a good argument and wants to change the subject. Isn't that how that like plays to your ear?
Oh, exactly. That's exactly how it plays. Yeah. Like we should move on. Well,
Yeah.
Also he's kind of putting the thumb screws to Jimmy Dore and saying, look, it appears to me that you are sucking up to Trump here. Like, I wasn't aware that you, a lefty, were like a giant Trump supporter on your show here. Tell me more about that. I want to understand that argument more.
Right.
And it feels like that's exactly why Jimmy Dore is pivoting away. He's like, oh, this is like, let's not talk about this. This is a bad thing to talk about on my show.
Yeah. And this is why I was curious. That's a great point. I was curious earlier when I said, I'm wondering how many people on the right watch Jimmy's show, because I wonder if, because he was friends with Dave Smith and all stuff, even though they should be completely polar opposites politically. Even though Jimmy Dore thought Jimmy Smith thought Jimmy Dore thought David Smith was in favor of a public option.
Right. Yeah.
Which is insane.
Right. Obviously,
Okay.
Dave Smith is a giant libertarian.
Right.
So.
And there is this perception, I don't know if it's true, but there's a perception that Jimmy Dore essentially has amassed a large right-wing audience by only specifically criticizing the left and kind of hand-waving away the right. Now, I don't watch enough of Jimmy's content to know whether I would agree with that characterization or not. But I'm wondering, watching this conversation, if that would be true, that would kind of explain a lot of Jimmy's weirdness here and hesitancy to go on this topic, because if he personally doesn't like Donald Trump, and he thinks that he has a bunch of right wingers in his audience, he's not going to want to spend a lot of time attacking Donald Trump. So he's going to try to be like, no, it's Joe Biden who's the real fascist.
Yeah, that could be going on here. I don't know the situation, so.
But if that's the case, I mean, if he's going to have Cornel West on his show and he's going to make this argument to Cornel, this is why this interaction is weird too. He's like, I'm going to invite Cornel West on the show and I'm going to tell him that you're doing a stupid thing here with your messaging. You need to talk about how Joe Biden's the real fascist. Okay. Or the bigger fascist. Donald Trump's a fascist, but Joe Biden's the bigger fascist. That's Jimmy Dore's argument.
Right.
Obviously, the first question you would think would be the response is, well, what is your argument for that?
He asked him that.
Right. But so then why is Jimmy like nervous about this? That should be this conversation that they're having right now should be the expected conversation that they were going to have. It shouldn't be like nothing that Cornel West says here should be catching Jimmy off guard at any point in this conversation. This is exactly where you expect the conversation to go.
I mean, I think obviously if Cornel West is running as a third party candidate on the left,
mm-hmm.
I mean, taking this political advice from Jimmy Dore is just political suicide. What's he talking about? Like,
right.
I'm supposed to do a campaign ad and talk about how Trump is not that bad? Like, what the fuck? Like, what are you smoking, Jimmy?
Right.
Like, are you high as can be?
Well, yes, and this is why people are saying it, and I agree with them. They're like, what exactly is Chris Christie's plan here? Because it just seems like it's suicide to just run hard against Donald Trump if you're a Republican.
So Chris Christie was saying that he's number 2 in Iowa now, just behind. Well, obviously Trump has a giant lead, but
I heard that. Yeah, I'm skeptical. I mean, Chris Christie thinks he's going to win each state one at a time. I'm just so skeptical of this. happening
Look,
unless Trump gets like arrested and everyone turns on him. I think that's Chris Christie's only pathway to winning the election here.
there might have been a time when if you could win Iowa, you would get some kind of momentum and potentially win the primary. I think it's been a long time since any primary winner has won Iowa. It seems like the guy who loses Iowa always goes on to be the nominee. So I just like winning in Iowa is a tough thing to hang your hat on at this late date.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember because this came up in 2020. They were saying that historically, actually, the second place person in Iowa had a better chance of being the president than the first place.
Yeah, Trump lost Iowa in 2016.
So maybe, hey, listen, maybe if Trump wins Iowa and Chris Christie gets second place, maybe it's a good sign.
Yeah. Okay. So look, Chris Christie should make that argument. That would be a good argument to make. He should say, I'm comfortable in second place. Normally, the person in second place in Iowa goes on to win this thing. Hi, you just listened to a clip from the Sitch and Adams show. If you like what you heard, you can listen to our live show right here on this channel on Sunday, starting at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. And if you want, you can super chat us. We read $20 and up super chats on the show and then do a follow-up stream on the following Tuesday where we read the rest of the unread super chats and interact with fans of the show. Subscribe to this channel right here to listen to the live show or to listen to more of our awesome clips.